going to be talking about an interesting question. Is there an important reason to complete or potentially not complete my rollover prior to the end of the year? So let's talk about this. Let's talk about why there could potentially be a need to make or not make a rollover prior to the end of the year. And just as a reminder, this is Office Hours with Michael Kitces. Obviously, I'm not Michael Kitces, Jeffrey Levine, Director of Advisor Education for the Kitces.com platform. And let's start with some areas where you want to absolutely make sure that you don't make a 401k to IRA rollover before the end of the year. The first would be, if you did a Roth conversion earlier this year and you have some after-tax money inside that traditional IRA, one of the last things you probably want to do is move money from the 401k over into the IRA now. Why? Well, because that Prorata Rule you might be familiar with in the IRA, that cream in the coffee rule that says every distribution you take is a portion of pre- and post-tax dollars, it's actually based on the year-end value of the IRA. So even though you may have converted everything inside the IRA today, if you move a 401k over to an IRA now, well, that could add to that year-end balance, and all of a sudden it could make your conversion a lot less tax efficient. In addition to that, you might also have a still working exception available to you in your plan, where if you move that over to the IRA, well, you lose out on that still working exception because there is no still working exception in the IRA. But having said all of that, there are a lot of reasons why making a rollover from a 401k to an IRA before the end of the year can be very beneficial. The first off is just simply consolidation and ease, especially if you're 70 and a half or older. If you're 70 and a half or older, you have required minimum distributions in general from all of your retirement accounts. If you've got IRAs, you have to take RMDs from your IRAs. If you have a 401k, you have to take that RMD separately from each 401k. If you've got 403b plans, you have to take those separately from just the 403bs. Well, if you complete those rollovers to an IRA before the end of the year, it makes life a lot easier, right? You don't have to worry anymore about, should I take my RMD from this account or this account? It's very easy. You just take it from any IRA you want as long as you get the total amount out. Whereas if you leave money in, let's say, multiple 401ks, you will still have to take an RMD from each and every one of those 401ks. In addition, what if you're interested in making a QCD, a qualified charitable distribution, in 2019, but you don't have any IRA money today to do it? One of the things you want to do is to make sure you complete that rollover to the IRA prior to the end of the year. Doing so will give you an IRA balance as of December 31st, 2018, and will make your RMD for 2019 an IRA RMD. See, QCDs, that qualified charitable distribution that allows you to give money directly from your IRA to charity and not included in your income at all, is only available for IRAs. So if you leave your money in a 401k or a non-IRA account as of the end of this year, you're not going to be able to use the QCD in the IRA next year to wipe out your RMD. It's not going to be eligible for that. It would only be eligible to do so the following year. So again, that pre-year-end rollover is important today potentially because you can get a benefit next year. To that point, if you have a lump sum distribution that you've been looking at doing this year, things like NUA, things like pre-74 capital gains elections, or even the 1980 or 10-year averaging based on the 1986 tables. All of that could potentially be another reason to get your rollover out of the 401k and over to the IRA today. And finally, I would add a QLAC. What is a QLAC? Well, it's a qualifying longevity annuity contract. And while you can purchase a QLAC in a 401k or 403b, most plans don't offer them as investment options. And so if you want that, or your client wants that, you're probably going to have to do it in an IRA. But the problem is your IRA QLAC amount is limited to the lesser of $130,000 or 25% of your prior year-end IRA balance. What if you don't have a prior year-end balance? 25% of zero is zero. So if that's the case and you want to have a QLAC purchase for next year, you've got to make sure that rollover happens before the end of the year, this year in 2018. Something else to consider, if you have somebody who has, or if you have multiple accounts, and one of those accounts has a beneficiary who is your spouse, who is your sole beneficiary on that account, and they're more than 10 years younger than you, and you are more than 7.5 years of age, well, in that case, that 10 years plus younger spouse allows you to take out a lower RMD each year. But that only works if you're the sole spouse beneficiary, or you have as your beneficiary your spouse, and they're their sole beneficiary for the entire year. So let's say you have two accounts. One account where your spouse, who's much younger, much meaning more than 10 years younger, is your sole beneficiary, and one account where you've got maybe your children or that spouse with other individuals. If you want to delay your RMDs, right? If you want to delay those RMDs, one thing you can consider doing, or at least diminish them, is move more money into that account where that spouse is your sole beneficiary for the entire year. And then finally, talking about a special type of rollover, a Roth conversion, which is a rollover. It's a rollover from a pre-tax account into a Roth IRA. A special type of rollover here is great, right? What could we be doing? Well, we could be doing a conversion before the end of the year because we want to avoid a conversion before the end of the year because we want to avoid RMDs in 2019, right? 2019 RMDs are based on your year-end value. If you convert before the end of the year, you diminish that amount that you have as a required minimum distribution next year. Also, remember that the Tax Cut and Jobs Act created a lower tax rate structure for roughly, 3/4 to plus of the American population this year. Not to say that the tax cut was a good thing or a bad thing. That's a political discussion. We're not going to enter into that today. But the fact is, most people do have lower tax rates in 2018 than they did last year. And as it stands now, that window is only through 2025, after which the tax rates of yesteryear come back and we go back to higher tax rates for most individuals. So we may have this limited range from 2018 through 2025 to get conversions out at lower tax rates than before. And obviously, we're not talking about a 50-year span. It's a very short amount of time, so you don't want to miss out on any one of those years if it's a potential benefit to you. Now, of course, you definitely don't want to do a conversion if it's not going to be tax efficient. Definitely don't do that before the end of the year because remember, part of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017 said the recharacterization option for Roth IRA conversions is completely eliminated. Can't do it anymore. So if you convert today, but you really shouldn't have, unlike years past, you can't go back in April when you do your taxes or even as late as October of next year. You can't go back and undo it like you could in the past. So if adding more income to your return this year is not a good thing, right? It might push you into a higher tax bracket or perhaps put you over a cliff for Medicare Part B premiums. If that's the case, you absolutely don't want to make that Roth conversion before the end of the year. So having said all that, let's finish up by talking about some of the rules for these last minute transactions. For instance, let's say you really do want to get a Roth conversion in for this year, but we're bumping up against the end of the year. We've got holidays. How can you ensure that it counts as a Roth conversion for 2018? And the answer is simple. The money has to leave the pre-tax account by December 31st. It doesn't actually have to get to the Roth IRA by that time. It doesn't have to be completed. You just has to leave the pre-tax account by December 31st. And as long as it gets to the other account in a reasonable amount of time, if it's a trustee-to-trustee transfer, or if it's a indirect rollover, certainly wouldn't recommend that. But if you did a 60-day Roth conversion, obviously you've got 60 days to get that money back into the Roth account. Similarly, if you're in the process of moving money, let's say from a 401k over to an IRA by the end of the year or vice versa, let's say you wanted to move money from the IRA into the 401k in order to maximize the still working exception if you're still working past 7.5, well, you want to make sure, again, that the money leaves the other account prior to the end of the year. That's really the key there. If it gets in afterwards, it's fine. Now, If you do have money outstanding at the end of the year on December 31st, and your client is over 7.5 years of age, you have to manually add that amount back in when figuring out their RMD calculation. The custodian typically is not going to do that. For argument's sake, let's say you had $100,000 in ABC custodian, and your client was moving another $100,000 from their 401k over to the IRA, and it left the 401k on December 30th, but on December 31st, it was kind of in no man's land. It hasn't gotten to the IRA yet, but it's not in the 401k. Well, the IRA custodian only knows what the IRA custodian has at the end of the year. They have $100,000. If they calculate that RMD for you or for your client, they're going to base that calculation on $100,000, not $200,000. So when that 401k transfer hits the IRA in the following year, you, the advisor, actually have to make sure that you adjust that prior year imbalance by that amount. Again, it's not going to be done by the custodian in the overwhelming majority of times. So again, coming up to the end of the year, lots to think about, kind of recapping. Reasons why you don't want to move your 401k to an IRA right now could be you did a Roth IRA conversion earlier this year, and you don't want to impact your conversion with more pre-tax dollars from a 401k to impact the Prorata Rule. You also may not want to lose out on the still working exception if you're still working and over 7.5. Why would you, again, recapping, why would you potentially want to do a last-minute rollover from a 401k to an IRA? Consolidation and ease of RMDs, that's high on the list. You might want to make a QLAC purchase in 2019, which would be based on your 2018 year-end value. You might want to make a QCD in 2019, which again can only be made from IRA dollars. And you might want to finish completing a lump sum distribution. So those are all reasons potentially to do the 401k to IRA rollover now with an urgency before the end of the year. And similarly, or the opposite vein, you want to make sure that you're doing the IRA to 401k rollover prior to the end of the year for two reasons. One would be you did an earlier year Roth conversion and you want to reduce the pre-tax dollars in your IRA. If that 8606 is a year-end form, well, guess what? Moving money out before the end of the year lowers that year-end balance. And also, if you're trying to delay or avoid RMDs next year, getting money into a plan where the still working exception exists today before the end of the year can allow you to delay RMDs on those IRA dollars today that are moved into the plan before the end of the year. So there's a good summary of some of the IRA to 401k priority moves before the year end. Always something to talk about. Hopefully you've picked up something that can help you or your clients and make a difference in their planning. I wish you all the best of luck and have a happy, healthy rest of the year. My name is Jeffrey Levine, Director of Advisor Education here at Kitces.com. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.